I guess the concept that we're trying trying to convey here is when put up under pressure, does that create excellence? Now, we're not creating the presupposition that the only reason why foundational Black Americans are excellent is because of an ass whooping. That's not what we're saying at all. But we're just examining the pressure put on people. Does it create excellence? Stories like the Jackson Five, Frederick Douglass. Does oppression create brilliance? Frederick Douglass is a good example, and unfortunately, I thought I had his book with me, but I left it in my little library. But so I'm gonna have to paraphrase. But Frederick Douglass, enslaved young man, was subjected to outrageous amounts of abuse, and he would get whooped. One of his slave masters, he had a couple, actually took pleasure in beating women in front of him. I think he beat his aunt so bad that the blood, and I wish I had his book so I can give the direct quote, but he would whoop her until the blood start to flow. And to paraphrase our dear brother, Frederick Douglass, he was not happy until he saw blood flowing. Frederick, if I may paraphrase him, said that the blood was almost sexual. Like he got off by seeing blood run down his aunt's back. All this pressure and oppression created the brilliant man who was Frederick Douglass. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, Frederick never went to college. He never had a formal education. Matter of fact, he got whooped for getting caught reading. But Frederick was shaped by all that oppression. He turned that negative into a positive. Back to the Jackson Five. The Jackson Five were subjected to so much oppression through their father that Michael turned that oppression into a sharpened vehicle of talent. Janet as well. Now, everybody acts different up under pressure, but looking through history, studying the broad spectrum of history, I've noticed that a lot of groups crumble up under pressure. Do y'all know that? Let's look at the Arawaks, which were the group that was colonized by Cristobal Colon, known as Christopher Columbus. The Arawaks, were oppressed so hard that they just gave up. According to Dr. Howard Zinn, with regard to the Arawaks, Dr. Zinn says the Spanish who colonized was now called Haiti. I think it was called Saint Domingue or Hispaniola. But Dr. Zinn says, quote, the Spanish grew more and more conceited every day. After a while, they refused to walk any distance. They rode the backs of the Indians as if they were in a hurry, or were carried on hammocks by Indians running in relays. In this case, they also had Indians carry large leaves to shade them from the sun and others to fan them with goose wings. Total control led to total cruelty. The Spaniards thought nothing of knifing Indians by the 10s and 20s and cutting off slices of them to test the sharpness of their blades. Las Casas tells how two of these so-called Christians met two Indian boys one day, each carrying a parrot. They took the parrots for fun and beheaded the boys. The Indians' attempt to defend themselves failed, and when they ran off into the hills, they were found and killed. Las Casas reports they suffered and died in the mines and other labors, and despite desperate silence, not knowing a soul in the world who they could turn to for help. So the Arawaks, I'm not taking anything from them. They were subjected to horrific conditions, just disappeared under that oppression. But when you look in the same book at foundational Black Americans, we reacted to oppression differently. I want y'all to hear me clearly. Foundational Black Americans, pressure put on foundational Black Americans created the United States of America. If I may do a Dr. Umar, I'm going to say that again. Pressure put on foundational Black Americans created the United States of America. And I'm not just talking shit. Literally, foundational Black Americans leaving the plantations, running away from the plantations, and joining forces with Black Indians, staged counterattacks on the plantations in the Northeast. And these counterattacks were so ferocious. Mind you, we don't talk about those in school. We don't talk about the uprisings. They were so ferocious that one of the leaders, named Benjamin Franklin, a weirdo that liked to walk around naked, y'all know him, the guy with the kite, wrote home to mama and told England that we need help or we're going to lose the Union. He wrote a letter y'all have all seen called the Join or Die letter. Now, years of my formal education have put that letter out of context. That letter was literal. It meant white male slave owners join together, form a union, or we gonna die at the hands of these Negroes. That pressure put on them by us, who were put up under original pressure by them, caused them to write the Constitution of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, what I just said is but for foundational Black Americans, we would have no America. We react to pressure differently. If you look at Dr. Howard Zinn's chapter, Slavery Without Submission, Emancipation Without Freedom, Dr. Zinn identifies that numerous slave revolts happened, were popping off in the 1790s. Dr. Howard Zinn says, quote, in the same period, 500,000 slaves grew to 4 million. A system harried by slave rebellions and conspiracies. Gabriel Prosser in 1800 was staging a rebellion. He got killed because of a snitch told on him. But did that make us crumble and fold? No. Denmark Vesey, 22 years later, staged an almost successful rebellion, but again, a raccoon snitched on him and got him killed. That would be enough for most groups to say, oh, forget about it. We can't fight. We can't fight this system. The system's too powerful. No. In a shorter amount of time, in 1831, Nat Turner staged a rebellion. Now, historical canon says that Nat Turner killed 50 people, 50 white people. I think that's bullshit. I think Nat killed hundreds. Dr. Zinn says developed a network of controls in the southern states backed by laws, courts, and armed forces and racial prejudice of the nation's political leaders. Dr. Zinn said it would either take a full-scale slave rebellion or a full-scale war to end such a deeply entrenched system. And our rebellions triggered the Civil War. We react to pressure differently. So, Wani, do you think ass whoopings create excellence?
I'm not going to say ass whippings per se, but I'm going to say threats of violence, the fear of ass whippings, and ultimately ass whippings, because whether I like it or not, it seems to be a thing. Some of the people that we admire the most have these very, very harsh conditions behind them. You know, like Marvin Gaye had severe beatings from his father. Ike and Tina Turner. Ike was very hostile and violent, and he whipped things into shape, and to a lesser extent, Cher as well. Sonny was very aggressive too. I don't know about the physical violence, but there was pressure, like, it has to be right. We know about Joe Jackson and the Jackson 5, and we know the quality that they produced under pressure. We know about Serena and Venus. Well, they wouldn't frame that as abuse, but as being strict, not abuse. But it is hard. Andre Agassi's father was very hard on him, and he did frame that as abusive, making him practice on and on and on and on. And Tiger Woods' father was abusive, making him practice and being manipulative and very extreme. And I think that, obviously as a collective, Black Americans Our lineage underwent a lot of extreme violence and threats of violence, which made us have a different mind state. This threat of violence creates a different mind state that we shift into to defend ourselves. It also sets up this attitude of, I'm going to show them. Because sometimes these abusers are putting you down at the same time. You're going to show them that you're not a loser. So you start to build up energy and fight against them. This is what we did as a collective. And as we can see, a lot of these people that I named did this on an individual basis.
Yeah, pressure. But we're looking at
Hello?
Oh, hold on one second. I must have hit mute. That was very strange. I was talking, the mute wouldn't go off.
It does sometimes.
Yeah, I was saying that it's yes, pressure can create excellence, but as you were talking, Wani, I analyzed the people. Everybody that you mentioned had something in common. They had some type of melanated genealogy. I accustomed that to carbon. That sounds wild, but if you take a piece of carbon and you put it up under immense pressure, what do you create? A diamond. Andre Agassi, what was he, Greek or Italian?
Yeah, he's Greek.
Yeah, he has a melanated lineage, although he identifies as white. Cher, what's her lineage? Armenian, right?
Armenian.
Yeah, so when you put melanated people up under pressure, they have a high potential of developing into a sharp and chiseled tool. I look at white excellence, and I don't see that same story with the quote unquote pure whites. Like they seemingly crumble under pressure.
They cheat to win a lot of times. It's nepotism. But the reason I brought up Andre Agassi and Cher and stuff like that was just to show that it could be on an individual level or it could be on a collective. We have both, because we have it on the collective with the legacy of slavery. And then we also have individual people. We know that it's a well-known fact that Michael Jordan whipped the Bulls into shape. I mean, I looked at them from the very beginning. They were not stars. The only person on there with potential was Michael Jordan. Those people, you would have never heard of them. Scottie Pippen would have never been heard of. And they were up against people that had the showtime. The Lakers, everybody on the Lakers was a star, a well-known person, but the Bulls were not. How do you, one man, whip all those men into shape? That's a miracle right there. And they were whipped into shape. They were physically beaten and threatened because he wanted to win. And they better not let him down. They were too scared to not play good basketball.
Well, that pressure put on other groups doesn't have the same effect. I wanted to identify that the slave trade in America was the harshest slave trade ever. And let me back that up with scholarship. According to our brother, Dr. Claude Anderson, he says, quote, modern slavery in the United States was often referred to as a peculiar institution because it was unusual in every sense. Webster's dictionary defines peculiar as something unusual belonging exclusively to a person or thing. Stop right there. I like that word exclusive because a lot of people groups are saying, we were enslaved too. We were enslaved. Everybody was enslaved. Okay, I don't believe it. But if that was true, our slavery was different. Dr. Claude Anderson says black slavery, which was diametrically different from ancient Roman slavery, listen at this, was the most extensive and harshest subjugation imposed upon any race of people ever. It was economic practice that was exclusively or peculiarly aimed at us. A number of conservatives argue that blacks were not singled out for slavery because they were black. moreover, it was argued that blacks were not treated by white slave masters, and slavery was not profitable, and that blacks gained as much from slavery as the experience of the white master. That shit that a lot of white conservatives say. But the point of the matter is, our enslavement was so extensively god awful that we had only a handful of choices. Our choice was to fold and just deal with it and disappear like the Arawaks, which I think was the intention of the American slave trade. Why do I think that? Well, I think that because a common practice of enslaved men on the cotton fields, if y'all didn't know, was to up their standards as they got older. That's in reverse. As you get older, you should ease off of, requirements of bushels of cotton. But for older men, if they were required to have 2 bushels a day of cotton when they were 25, when they were 50, they were required to have 4. When they were 60, they were required to have 6. And the way that was explained to me is they wanted to kill them. They wanted to work you to death because slaves didn't have a social security, or they didn't want to have to pay for somebody once they got old and couldn't work. So they just literally work you to death. All this oppression created a reaction that's very different from a lot of different cultures in history. Instead of trying to assimilate and trying to join, if you can't beat them, join them, we became diametrically opposed to them, which is I don't know if y'all know how rare that is in the annals of history. I can't think of another group that did that. The Haitians are the closest group to turn and fight, but their fight was, temporary, and then they assembled once they beat the French, which was an amazing feat. I'm not taking it away from Haitians, but
Black students, we need to know our history.
The black history we're being taught in public schools is repetitive.
As a black high school student, I want to learn more about my history in the school books.
We need to update our books.
As black American students, we deserve an accurate depiction of what black history truly is.
I want to see myself in these textbooks.
In the public school system, black history is vague.
Why don't the school books ever talk about the Freedmen's Bureau?
I created the workbook for the African American family. This book helps fill in the gaps that the school books don't. Purchase the workbook for the African American family on OurStoryPublications.com and use the Cash App, $Our Story Publications.